The NFL officially approves a 17-game regular season. Let's talk about how and even if that affects fantasy. Let's go.
Yep. All right, guys, and before we get started, I just wanted to point out, you probably saw that we're wearing our Boom Bust gear, and we just got that. We are working on a merch store. We're working with a local vendor, and we'll have that up and running pretty soon, hopefully. So, okay, Kyle, let's talk about the 17-game season that was just approved. Does this actually affect fantasy, or in my mind, am I just kind of overblowing it a little bit?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to affect too much, honestly. You're going to see the playoffs in each league get pushed back a week, so you'll get an extra matchup against a different teammate. Any 10-team league knows you play multiple people, multiple times. You'll just add one of those. New rivalry, new 2-game rivalry, right? It also means you'll have an extra, you can push that trade deadline back a week and have an extra week for trading.
Hallelujah.
Which I know me and you are very excited about. Our league mates, maybe not so much.
I bet they're dreading that.
Yeah. They'll probably try to make a vote where we kind of just leave it at week 12 and not move it back a week.
Or they vote that we don't start trades until 2 weeks into the season or something.
Yeah. Or, I mean, I'm the league manager. I do what I want. The main thing you got to think about though when you're drafting, the extra wear and tear that another game does to the players, and ultimately that's what the players themselves were worried about when they were discussing a 17th game on their end. Was that's extra wear and tear. It's just one game. It didn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking about 200 and 300-pound guys smacking each other in the mouth for 60 minutes a week, it's a lot. So, you kind of have to decide for yourself. Does that extra game make you shy away maybe from running backs a little bit more?
Well, because is that going to cause more running back by committee? Maybe if coaches are also looking at that wear and tear. So
it very well could. It could
maybe
cause
your common workhorses aren't workhorses anymore. It's amazing, just one game, how it can affect something like that. But
yeah, and it might not cause the coaches to go, okay, well, I've got, just as an example, let's say we got Christian McCaffrey over here. We're not going to bring somebody in and go 50-50 split with him because of one game, but he might lose 1 or 2 series a game over it. For someone like Christian McCaffrey, it's not as big a deal, but for the guys that are already in a fairly equal split with somebody else, then that could become the difference between taking them and taking a receiver that's guaranteed a handful of, catches a game.
Absolutely.
You just got to look at the opportunity and basically where you want to place the risk on your team. And for me, ultimately, it probably won't affect any decisions I make until you get down to those mid to late round, outside the top 20 running backs, receivers kind of guys. And then you're like, well, I'd rather have a receiver that might not wear down so fast come late in the season, especially late season waiver claims and stuff like that. It might get more prudent toward start carrying more handcuffs for your running backs, or do you go with this receiver that has a shot? We'll cover it during the season on a case-by-case basis. And when we start doing mock drafts this summer and stuff like that, we can take a look closer into how some of those decisions come into play. But, I mean, ultimately, that's a pretty minor difference overall.
Like I said, I don't think it's going to make a 50-50 split. I think, like I said, maybe 1 or 2 series a game, which adds up over time on that wear and tear for a player. So it makes that little bit of a difference. But sounds like ultimately there's more pros to this than cons for fantasy players. I mean, another week of trading, another week of just playing, and
Yeah.
hopefully playing against Ben, Um, so
Poor Ben.
hopefully you get a good draw on that matchup for that extra week. But ultimately, it
You
sounds like for
won't.
fantasy players, it's actually mostly pros, more booms than busts,
Exactly. And I'm the league manager, so you won't get a good draw for that extra week, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is.
If
But
either of us gets a good draw, it will be collusion.
it is decided. So I actually saw a tweet today that I wanted to run over. It lists out the 17th game for every team. And I just wanted to go through and kind of mention some of the ones that I think will be more interesting. So at the top of the list, you see Washington versus Buffalo. I think that could end up being a really good game.
Well, after Washington's team improved in this offseason, yeah.
Yeah, and they were looking real good even at the end of last year. So I think that'll be a really good game. Dallas versus New England. I think they'll both be much better this year than they were last year. Dallas will get healthy. New England has added some pieces that I think will make them very, very improved. Seahawks versus Steelers. I think that'll be a really fun matchup. Pardon me. The Rams and the Ravens, I think, will be a really good one. The one that I'm probably most interested in this list is the Cardinals versus the Browns. So
Yes.
Kyler Murray versus Baker Mayfield, Boomer Sooner.
Wow, that's a fun matchup.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun.
And a very fantasy relevant game. Which is nice.
Very, yeah. They've both got a lot of pieces there. Bucks Colts, I think will be good. I'll be interested to see how the Colts do with Wentz instead of Rivers. Ultimately, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between the two. I think you'll see a very similar offense with the Colts that you did last year.
But they got the Mac attack back, baby.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. The one that will be most relevant to our friends outside of Cardinals and Browns is the Packers-Chiefs matchup that I think will be very exciting, especially for Donnie and Austin. I think they'll both really dig into that one. So those are just the ones that kind of jumped out to me on the slate. So it's given us quality matchups on top of everything else, just outside of fantasy, just for football lovers. Those are going to be fun matchups.
No doubt. They did a good job on that. Cool.
Yep, I agree. So, yeah, that's all I've got about it. Just wanted to touch on some of that real quick and kind of, because I know everybody, you hear this news and you're like, does that affect fantasy at all? So we're here to tell you how it did, and really it didn't that much.
Well, not in a negative way, anyways.
It doesn't negatively affect you, so you're all set.
You know what I got to say about that?
Drop that beat. You drop that bass, baby.
Yeah, baby. All right, guys. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.